So to start our scouting tour, I'm at Wimbledon Windmill. Built in 1917, it wasn't until 1902 that BP stayed at Mill House, writing part of the first novel, Scouting for Boys. He was offered to stay to write his book by a friend who had met him in Malta. He's also said to use the common to test out ideas, and without it, scouting may very well not exist. But this isn't the only interesting place in London. Next up, we have inside Westminster Abbey is a joint memorial stone that's against the St George's Chapel for Baden-Powell and his wife. Although both are buried in Kenya, the stone was unveiled in 1981. There is an earlier stone that was just for BP, and that was there from 1947. Next on our scouting history tour is Villiers Street. It's just next door to Charing Cross Station and Embankment, and the reason why we're here is because Cub Scouts wouldn't exist without this person. This person being, of course, Rudyard Kipling. Now, Rudyard Kipling used to live here on 43 Villiers Street between 1889 and 1891 in a one-bedroom apartment. Now it's called Kipling House, and there's a blue plaque above it just to show that Rudyard Kipling was here. Another part of our history tour is here. This used to be BP House and was built from 1961. It was used as the headquarters for UK Scouting and also had hostels for Scouts who wanted to obviously come to the UK. After the pandemic in 2021, the Scout Association decided to actually sell the building, and it's now a sixth form college. But there used to be a statue that used to stand outside the main entrance of the building of Baden-Powell, which was later moved to here at Gilwell Park, just next door to the White House. So another spot on our history tour is 9 Hyde Park Gate. The reason why is you may just walk past this and never know Baden-Powell used to live right here. Although he was born in Paddington, he obviously had significant places around Kensington and Chelsea, and he also has a blue plaque on the side here. Another part of our history tour is the Olympia, which is that dome there. It's currently having a lot of work on the outside of it, but it was the first time that the word jamboree was ever used in scouting, because the first World Scout Jamboree in 1920 was in there. It had 8,000 scouts across 34 different countries. There was also animals and different things like that, and also it was the first time that Baden-Powell was classed as Chief Scout of the World, a position and role that he kept until his death. Next on our scouting history tour is London Bridge. Now, the bridge itself may not contain any significant thing and connections to scouting. However, at Gilwell Park, there are parts of the old 1760 London Bridge. So when it was being replaced in 1831, Thomas Usborne, who obviously owned Gilwell House at the time, bought a bit, and there is now a 20-metre section of London Bridge at Gilwell Park behind the White House. Here on our history tour is another interesting thing, and it is this buffalo statue, which is actually called the Unknown Scout statue. And the reason behind it was in 1909, William D. Boyce had a good turn from a Boy Scout in London, and because of that, in 1910, he formed the Boy Scouts of America. Now, this statue here was given to us by Boy Scouts of America at the time, and then in 1926 the Unknown Scout, even though no one knew who he was awarded the Silver Buffalo Award. Another part of our history tour is this fella. This fella is the Ideal Scout, or the Boy Scout. It was sculpted by a Canadian sculptor called R. Tate Mackenzie. this one isn't the actual genuine, it's a replica of the original. The original is still in Pennsylvania, but the replica is, there's over about 18, I believe, in the US of A, and there's also one in Gilwell Park, which is here, and also one on the National Office of Scouts in Canada, which is in Ottawa. The Baden-Powell statue is the place where, if you visit Gilwell Park, you can take photos, put your neckerchief around his neck and the like, and get quite a few selfies. But this statue here was presented to UK Scouting in 1968 by a Mexican Scout organisation. This version is actually a copy of the one that's in Mexico back in 1962. As thanks, the Gilwell Park Camp Chief, John Thurman, presented the Mexicans with a replica of BP's footprint. In 2016, Gilwell opened the Promise Path, where people could buy a brick in memory of a loved one, a group, or person important in Scouting. Each brick generated money towards UK Scouting, made an amazing path that you can now find at Gilwell Park, just behind the White House and the main buildings. And if you're lucky, you can even spot our brick. The Gilwell Oak, voted England's Tree of the Year in 2017. The Gilwell Oak sits on the training ground at Gilwell Park. It's reputed to have been used by Dick Turpin, and it also inspired Baden-Powell of how growth for members was like an acorn that would grow into an oak. And even some of the very first wood beads that leaders got from in the training ground came from this very tree. If you ever get to come to Gilwell Park, there is definitely one place that you need to visit, especially when the sun sets or the sun rises, and it's called Essex Chase. Over there is obviously London still, and this is a nice hill all the way down. But you'll find that when you're going to places like Gilwell Reunion or events like this is the perfect place to camp if you can, because you get to see some amazing views and some amazing sights, if the weather's good, that is.